And at that moment, this little flame inside of me became a bonfire. I was not done. Everybody's learning. Everybody's growing. Everybody's got to start somewhere. How the wise one grows. How the wise one grows.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to How the Wise One Grows. And this episode is really important for a lot of reasons. One is this is my first in-person conversation, which is already like feeling soul-giving. And this conversation is with one of my most important souls in the world and someone who has guided me from the very beginning. So, in honor of the person you're about to meet, we're going to take a moment to ground and land together as we were just doing. So, take a moment to just situate yourself wherever you are. And I invite you to soften your gaze if it feels safe for you. And notice where your body is touching the earth. Allow your spine to lengthen and your shoulders to soften down the back. Inhale, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. And exhale, open your mouth, let it go. Inhale, fill the chest, fill the belly with air. Exhale, open your mouth, let it out. One more big inhale. And exhale. Feel where you're rooted at the earth beneath you. Feel your breath as it flows through your body. And then you can slowly open your eyes as you return to this space. And opening my eyes right now, I actually feel like I am dreaming because I am with the one and only Tara Becky Eschenroeder today. And this person is magic. Anyone who knows her can tell you that for certain. She has been magic in my life, guiding me every breath of the way. And I have not felt as grounded as I do in this moment for a while. Certainly not for recording one of these. So I'm so excited for you to soak in her wisdom and magic. And let me start by telling you just a little bit about our Tara. Teaching was Tara's dharma long before she realized it. She grew up with a bow and arrow in her hands, learning to pull back with just enough aim and control to send her arrow into the abyss, knowing and trusting it would hit its end mark, or intended mark. And so she enters each class, each workshop, each lesson, having prepared her body and mind to become that bow, that vessel, that lets her lesson go, weaving its way into the provided space and landing wherever it is intended. When you practice with Tara, you get more than a teacher on the mat. I can attest to this myself. You gain guidance for your daily life, and it's so true. Inside the studio, no two classes or workshops are ever the same. Students are not told what to do. They are empowered to listen to their own bodies. Tara's home is in Asheville, North Carolina, where we are today. She is an ERYT 200-hour 500-hour, RCYT, YACEP.
Oh my gosh, so many letters.
All the letters. Every letter you can have, she has it. And self-published author and a certified life coach and mentor. Literally as good as it gets in the flesh. I am so excited to be sitting with you.
I am so honored to be sitting here with you, Halls.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, that good breath.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hold space for you. I have the great privilege of knowing who you are and having the honor to kind of watch as you weave your way through this world. And I'd love to hold space for you to share a bit about your journey and all the windy roads that got you to this magical treehouse that we are sitting in. I've seen you navigate some pretty big twists from teaching school kids to teaching yoga to life coaching to writing to moving and maybe just landing on a little bit about that background and the ways you dropped in and knew when you were ready to change things.
That's such a great question, Halls. Thank you for narrowing that down for my sparkly brain that we were just talking about as I look at my golden snow globe with sparkles in it behind me. So I began this journey a long time ago. And when did we even meet each other?
You were my first... I have the best story for you. I'm so excited to retell you this.
Because I know our families have known each other for a really long time.
Forever.
Yeah.
But I found, you're such an important part of my healing, is I found my way into one of your yoga classes at Oman. I think it was maybe 2009 or 2010. I was in high school and in a dark place going through in high school, I casually dated a bipolar heroin addict. And that's a really good way to give you some trauma. And as that was in some darkness and its end, and I didn't know what to do, that's when I fell into yoga and I fell into ceramics. And I remember I would spend Saturday, our high school at the time would stay open on Saturdays for the ceramic students to go in. So I would go to yoga in the morning and then I would go to the ceramic studio and create. And I was in your class at Oman one day and I remember I just completely dropped in. It was the most I had felt in my body, in myself, in who knows how long at that point. And I remember at the end of class, I hear a voice saying, and turn so that you're facing the sound of my voice. And I remember thinking in my head, that's such a silly thing for someone to say. And then I open my eyes and sure enough, I am facing backwards on the yoga mat. So your voice was trying to tell me to face the front of the room. And I was so in another land that I'm just in bliss in the back of the room facing backwards. And I was I like her. And then I was hooked.
Halls, I love that story. Oh my gosh, the amount of magic and blessings and miracles that occurred because of the walls that were I've been spending some time in Appalachia. That was Oman yoga. Shout out to everything Oman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that story. I've definitely done that a few times too. And there was something that you said. You said a lot of very important things in sharing that story. And you mentioned how you totally dropped in to your body. And that's it. That has and continues to be my compass. And I have always been... I would say I've had a little bit of energy my whole life.
For those who do not know, Tara is an energy bunny ball. It's exuding out of her always. No one can keep up.
And so yoga, right, because I've been kinesthetic for pretty much my whole life. Like, those Johnny jump up things that you put on the threshold of the doors for babies, and
Oh,
you put
yes.
them in the little
I had no
seat
idea
thing.
where you were going at first.
Oh,
Now
yeah.
I
That
see it.
saved my parents when I was younger, if that gives you a little bit of an
Completely
idea.
believe it.
Yeah. So being perpetual motion for majority of my young life, movement has always brought me joy, right? Until it became also a place of escaping, right? So making my way to the mat and also off of the mat, so these mindfulness practices of noticing our breath, noticing the light shining through the leaves, right, on a tree, noticing what it smells like, noticing what it feels like. And I'm very blessed with the parents that I chose who raised me outside and with music around often. And my dad took me to my first class on a mat, and my mom was who kept inviting me after college to come to yoga, because I was in a pretty dark place after that, at that point in my life. And so finding my way to the mat allowed me a space to integrate these lessons that they had been sharing with me throughout my childhood. And it also allowed me a place to move intentionally and to also learn how to be still. Right? And
I think that's the key of it for me too. It's that I like to move beyond the go. Very similar in that. And it's when it lets you land in your body and in yourself.
Yeah.
And not need to run away.
Right. And also allow that to inform you when it is time to leave, right? Because both of us we share very openly about our journey with anxiety and how it has become one of our greatest teachers, and how it can also be there to help us if it's time to leave a situation, right? And so I find that so interesting, the timing that you were sharing with that class at Oman, because that was the year that my teacher transitioned from this earth, right? And she gave me a message to share, right? And so this other aspect of getting into the body and also deep listening. And I love stories. I love storytelling too. So I'd love to share a story that was
please.
Like this moment of, well, it's two-part. So the first part of it is when I started going regularly to practice. My mom gave me that invitation. Then I was like scouring through Natural Awakenings magazine in Richmond and like what free classes. So I remember I had been practicing for like maybe a few weeks, and I was at my parents' house in Richmond, Virginia. This was after I graduated college, and I was really navigating through some darkness. And I remember this moment memory, as my dad calls it. I walked down the stairs and I said, "Mom, I know what I have to do for the rest of my life." I had no idea what it was going to look like, but I knew that this practice that people called yoga was very important. And it started as the physical practice on the mat, right? And so I started searching and seeking out, and then it led to my yoga mama, as I call her, Sonia Stokely, just had a birthday last week. Happy birthday, yoga mama. She introduced me to Arlene Bjork, who I now refer to as my guardian angel, who left this earth at a very young age, actually at the age that I am right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and Arlene had this ability to listen. She had a deep knowing, and I feel that she was still navigating herself and how to then live that externally. And there were certain things that she knew and that she exemplified without like talking about it. This is how you listen. This is how you intuitively discern, right? She lived it. And so she and I used to go to Ginger Thai in Carytown.
Yes.
Often. So her thing
I always
was,
think of you when I go there,
oh my
too.
God. That best spring rolls.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Next time you're in Richmond, I can make a mean spring roll now, so you're definitely coming over for some spring rolls.
That is one of my favorite meals. Like, I kind of make them spring roll burritos now.
They are like a burrito. That's literally what I think every time. I'm like, wow, this is incredible.
Oh my God, I love it. So, Arlene, this is really fun, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm
having
really
a blast.
digging this, what's happening right now. So
controlling it.
Right. Feeling our feet.
But not controlling it.
Did you see what's on the top of my yoga mat?
What is it? Oh, the wolf?
Feel your feet.
Oh, yes.
Yep. So we're feeling them. Okay. Focusing. Those were some sparkles. We're very happy sparkles. So Arlene and I went to Ginger Thai often. That was our favorite space because we would search all Thai restaurants in Richmond. Her thing was pad Thai, mine was spring rolls, and we would find the best, and that was our favorite. And we connected within the practice of asana, yes, and we also connected with photography. So that used to be one of my most prominent means of self-expression. That picture over there is one of probably my favorite picture that I ever took of her. That was in Maymont. It looks like an African jungle or something.
And those who don't know Arlene, she also has a beautiful book called A Vessel of Blessing.
A Vessel of Blessing.
That Tara took the pictures for. And it's a work of art from the words to the photography that lives in there.
Thank you, Halls.
And it's on Amazon.
Yeah, yes, it is. And thank you for saying that. So that was another piece of like one of her knowings was getting the photography done for that book. I feel that she knew that she was going to depart earlier than most others would, and so yes, to continue on with this story of exemplifying knowing and listening. So we're sitting at Ginger Thai, and Arlene, we're in the middle of our meal, and she stops and she says, "Oh my gosh, I just had this vision." I was like, yeah. Like anything that comes out of her mouth, I'm like, I'm there. Like you can see my tail wagging.
I'm picturing you as Luna wagging her tail with her ears.
And so she said, "Okay, here's what I just saw. One day, we are going to create for you a photography showing. And there are going to be hundreds of people there. And they're all going to be viewing your photography in the same space and celebrating these images." And so I was like, okay, like again, anything Arlene says, I'm like, it's gonna happen. Yep, we're gonna make it happen. She had that ability to see what you were capable of. Like, yeah, a seed is a seed, right? And she had this like X-ray vision to be able to see, like, it's gonna be a rose, it's gonna be an oak tree, it's gonna be whatever is inside. And then she's like, miracle grow to make that seed become what it already is, right?
It's hearing you talk about Arlene like that is literally how I describe you to people. Like times 1,000.
Wow. I'm receiving that, Halls. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that's important.
It's true. 100%.
Thank you. And so I received that message, and my tail was still wagging. And so months go by, and the seed had been nurtured, right? And so tragically, Arlene transitioned from this earth at a very young age, and it was very sudden. However, like the week before she transitioned, I was on break from work. I was a preschool teacher at the time. And I remember checking my phone, and I had a voicemail from her. She was living in Costa Rica at the time. And she was talking about, and I called her back, and she was like, yeah, I'm here. And we were talking about how she was going to be home for Christmas. She was going to give me braids. We were going to hang out with Whitley, her daughter, who's still a very important part of we were just texting earlier today, actually. Very important part of my life, soul sister. And she said during that conversation, she said, Becky, I think of you every day. And every time I think of you, I think of your parents. And how I have never in my life met parents like yours. And they are incredible. And you are so blessed to have them. And I was like, yeah, I chose good.
You did.
Right? And and so hung up the phone and went back into the classroom. And then the following week, I get a call from my dear friend and let me know that she had passed. And it was shocking. I had to pull the car over. I remember exactly where I was. And I called Mom and Dad immediately, found out where they are. They were in total whine. I met them at the parking lot. And I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. And I was able to give them that message. And so a few weeks go by. And by the way, we're about 2/3 of the way through our teacher training at this point. And I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, maybe it's not time to pursue this thing of yoga. I'm going to be a teacher, and yoga is going to continue to be a part of my life, and I'm just not meant to teach this yet. And so then Sonia calls me up, my yoga mama, and Wendy also, and we get together to chat about how we can infuse some special things to her memorial service. And so I said, all right, I'm going to bring all my pictures, and let's talk about how we're going to help. And and we had a few different conversations and meetings and talked with family also. And and so the day of the memorial shows up, and by that time I had decided, like, okay, it's not time yet. And how are we going to finish a teacher training? She's not here anymore, right? And how can I continue to honor her message in other ways? So get to the memorial, and there is no parking left. Like, people are parked in the grass, and then you get to the actual church, and people are spilling out of the building. There is standing room only. This woman, I'm still meeting people whose lives she touched that I didn't know back then, still to this day, right? And so there's a beautiful service, and then we're getting towards the end of the service, and the lights go dim, and then all of a sudden you hear Sting singing in the background, and Arlene had a little bit of an obsession, and by little bit I mean like
a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot. She loved Sting. So Sting is playing in the background. The lights go down, and then there's these projector screens at the front of the room. Hundreds of people in the room. And all of a sudden, one picture after I still get chills when I tell this story. One image after the other of these creations that we made together, honoring her memory in the form of my photography. And at that moment, this little flame inside of me became a bonfire. I was not done. She was giving me a message in that moment. She was communicating with me. So the next day, I called Yoga Alliance, and I talked to a beautiful soul. Her name was Janine. I still remember her name. She was a photographer too. And I told her our story. And we also came to realize that the teacher training program that we were doing was a 300-hour, because it was Arlene's intention to roll that into another one to become 500. So we had done well over the 200 required hours. So Janine said, I'm going to help you. let's develop a rubric. So I called up my dear friend Rachel Cook, who is now, she was a yogapreneur, now goes by Rachel Cook, and she's changing lives all over the world. I remember her still doing one of her first presentations on these giant paper notepad things with markers at Grace Yoga downtown, and like she is changing lives all over this world. And so Rachel and I developed a rubric of sorts with Janine and presented it to the rest of the people in our class. We were the second graduating class, and then also shared it with the first graduating class. And with the help of our peers in the first graduating class, we were able to complete our teacher training, and they signed off on our remaining requirements so that we could be certified yoga instructors. And so I've always sort of considered myself the word orphan doesn't, like, I've been adopted, I've been embraced by it's been familial since the beginning. It has been family since the very beginning. And so that I truly believe that Arlene gave her 2 graduating classes a message. And I say every single day, Halls, and I imagine the book is where this began. Thank you for allowing me to be a vessel of blessing, an instrument of peace, living a life of inspiration, inspiring others to do the same from a place of fulfillment. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? I am listening. So it began with shooting a bow and arrow in my backyard with my dad, to him teaching me how to meditate on a rock next to a dog in Maine, to my mom taking me outside to inspect petals of flowers when I was a baby. You can see that picture, those 2 pictures of mom and dad on the top right there. Yep, since the very beginning. And both of them teaching me the indescribably important value and practice of listening. 2, learning how to be safe in my body, which I'm still learning. This is still a practice that I am actively learning and practicing on a daily basis, right? It's like this giant connect the dot that is still connecting itself, right? And so the more that I surround myself with people who practice listening, who practice mindfulness, who practice walking the path of their own dharma, right? The more that I am reminded the importance of doing the same. So that led me to classes with my mom after college, and then I took it upon myself, and then, this person led to this person, led to this place, led to this place, and all of a sudden I am leaving the elementary school teaching classroom and starting a business that's teaching yoga all over Richmond, and then I'm traveling out west to teach teacher trainings, and then I'm traveling to Central America to lead retreats, and then I'm writing a book, and then I'm creating an album of meditations, and I'm like, what? So none of this, Halls, none of this was planned. None of it. Right? And there comes a point when planning is necessary, when it becomes clear what the next thing is that needs to be planned, right? But Mark Nepo, he said these words on a conversation with Tara Brach, and this resonated so deeply. It's not a bucket list. It's not a 5-year plan. I simply want more of what is. Right? And there's often an analogy that I use. I speak in stories and analogies and in movement. So parts of the beginning of my life, I was walking on a sidewalk, which the sidewalks are not bad. Sidewalks can also serve us. I love to bike to or run to a place called Beaver Lake here in Asheville. And the sidewalk is really helpful when I'm going down the Brizzy Road until I get to the lake in the woods. Thank you, sidewalk, right? So sidewalks can be important sometimes. However, when we spend our entire life on a sidewalk, that is what, in my experience, I'm not judging people who like sidewalks. In my experience, I need to be rolling in the dirt, right? I need to be climbing mountains and getting scraped knees. That is something that I need in my bones. Not saying everybody does, right? This is my path. So part of my path is often stepping off of the sidewalk, right? And so what that means is I'm probably going to get more scraped knees. I'm probably going to have run-ins with animals, creatures. I'm probably going to get lost, right? And I'm also probably going to have great stories to tell. I'm going to see some ineffable views. And I'm going to remember the importance of every step that I took and lean into the importance of every step before I take it, right? So right now, I'm living in a place that feels really good to call home. I'm teaching asana both in person and virtually. I'm leading retreats again. I'm life coaching, which still sounds funny to say.
It's
coaching
not
lives.
funny, though, because literally that is what you do, like, from the moment I've met you.
Thank you, Halls. And that was another dot. Shout out to Trace Jostling years ago. She's in Canada. Very dear friend. We were meeting for yoga one day. And she was like, Bex, we need to have a talk before we flow today. And she said, so these like vision boards that we're creating and these other conversations that we're having, I have a feeling that I'm not the only person that you're doing this with. And do you realize what you're doing? You're changing my life. You're providing invitations for my life to change. And this is life coaching. And I literally Googled life coaching. I had no idea what it was. Thank God I did, because I learned about Martha Beck that day.
Amazing. Definitely check out the Bewildered podcast.
Yes.
Love Martha Beck.
Oh my God. So good. And Way of Integrity, her new book. And so it's these dots, and they present themselves, right? Another was, for the longest time, I didn't share my own poetry. I would read Victoria Erickson, Mary Oliver, John Muir, Dana Faulds before or after practice. And then I started writing when I started traveling, and I was like, oh God, maybe I'll share one of my poems. My armpits are sweating. This makes me feel scared. And so I did, and then people would come up to me after and be like, where can I find that? And so it's like, it's these different doorways, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the author of Women Who Run with Wolves, she speaks of the doors. And she says, the doors to the world of the wild self are few and precious. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the earth and the sky, or maybe it's the water in the sky, so much you almost cannot bear it, that is a door. If you yearn for a deeper life, a sane life, there's one more kind of life, that is a door. Sorry, Clarissa. Yeah, so whether it's a dot, whether it's a door, and listening to this internal compass. So I have this compass on my altar that my dad gave me.
Which she just reached and perfectly grabbed where this compass was. That is gold and magical and engraved. It looks like a family.
Can you read? Can you see what it says? It's in cursive and it's tarnished, so no pressure.
Always, I can read cursive. It took me a minute, but now I'm remembering. I thought it was a foreign language.
Could be Sanskrit.
Always find your edge, but first find your drishti. And for those who don't know, drishti means focal point, focus.
Yeah. Right. And that was a gift given to me by my dad years ago, and this snow globe, the golden snow globe that sits in the middle of my altar, is a gift from Mom. So it's the importance, right, of like intentionally going to that place that feels really uncomfortable, whether it's at the foot of a mountain path, right, stepping off of the sidewalk, whether it's moving to another state, whether it's starting a business, writing a book, any number of things, right? So find that edge. Whether it's on your mat, going into freaking pigeon pose if you've taken a really long hike, you know?
I took one of Jay Miles, amazing, one of his classes on Sunday, and we did these pigeons, and I sobbed. And the rest of the day, I was sobbing, and that hasn't happened to me in a long time, but it was this great release. And I think, well, you were saying before with that quote about the doors, I think a lot of it I'm resonating with lately as listening and then opening and letting go. Like listening to that feeling, that thing, and then just watching it and letting it flow through you, versus I have a tendency to feel like, and I think this is a similarity, where we like to take action and be in control, and we have a great ability to make things happen. However, it's a surrender to, I can like kind of scaffold the space for something to happen, and then I can step back and let whatever's ready to move through it, move through it. And it's like, it makes my body soften, and my jaw gets less tense when it's like, oh, I don't have to hold on so tightly to all of this. Yes.
Yeah, I feel you. I just went to acupuncture last week. And also shout out to Jay Miles, my soul brother, who has been a tremendous part of this journey and continues to be too. Thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, so I was at acupuncture last week, and I had made a decision right before getting there. And my acupuncturist and dear friend, Lisa Sherman, she said, oh, you surfed the urge. And I said, tell me more.
What did I do?
Right. And I've been leaning into a lot of, because I'm very, I prefer land and dirt and earth, and just, I sort of resist water at times, which is interesting because I'm a water sign. And right. Yeah. And I've been noticing water does ground me. That's what I've noticed. So it's like, of course I resist it.
Yeah.
So water has really been coming into my awareness, my field of awareness, especially the river. And so all of a sudden she's talking in analogy too, and she's talking about how it was in the eddy and going through the rapids, and I'm like, oh my God, like you're so in my mind. And she's so going back to surf the urge, it's like noticing when that thing is coming, right? So let it come, let it be, let it go. Let it come, watch it, maybe even step towards it. Let it be, sit with it. Oh, this is separate from me. And then release it, right? And allow that to, so I really appreciated that, because that's been an important part of decision making, also with journey with anxiety as well. It's like, okay, sit and be with it. That was something that Sue Agee told me years ago, is the things that are most important to her. The things that are most important to her. Like if somebody comes to her with an ask, like something that requires a decision, a non-negotiable is to sleep on it at least 24 hours before making a decision. Right. And that's so, my God, that's so uncomfortable for those of us who want to do. Right. And it allows for the clarity. Yes. And so going back to the doors, it's like sitting with it first, unless it's an emergency, right? Going back to Mark Nepo, February 24th is the reading that I return to over and over again in the Book of Awakening. When feeling urgent, you must slow down. Unless someone is bleeding or on fire, slow down. That is a sure sign. And that's been one of my biggest practices, right? It could be like why I'll catch myself like making tea and I'm like going really fast to put the tea bag in the water, like getting out of the shower and like putting my sesame oil over my arms. I'm like, is there an emergency happening here, sweet bird? That's what I call myself. Very lovingly. I talk to myself a lot too, just like you were talking about in your first episode.
It's important.
Right. Yeah. So that too. I mean, it's becoming your inner best friend. I mean, speaking to yourself in the way that you would speak to me, or I would speak to you, right? Like how would Holly say this, deliver this message to me right now? And am I speaking to myself in that same way? And that also provides the clarity, because that provides the regulation for the nervous system.
Yeah, right? Taking that pause and that ability to see it. And I often try to remind myself of just that, like, how would I be talking to my best friend right now? And it's not the way I'm talking to myself right now.
Right.
So why do we think this is okay?
Yeah.
Something I am endlessly curious about, and I think that we have a lot of parallels with, is, and this is where I want my Tara guidance, is the discerning between intuition and anxiety. And when we approach those moments of big change, and like there is like healthy discomfort and anxiety that comes with growth, and then there's a place where anxiety is telling you not that, like trying to help give you a nudge. And I think as someone, then I get anxious about like, wait, which one does this mean? What does that mean? And I get in this loop. And yeah, how do we discern between the two?
That's such a great question, and one that I'm continuing to flex that muscle and listen to
probably not
too.
A clear answer.
Right. And so I was actually having a conversation with Caitlin, my sister. Was that yesterday or today? Gosh, time. I think that was today.
You did tell me you talked to her today. So.
Yeah, I think it was today. And we were having a similar conversation about decision making and intuiting, like when both decisions are hard, right? So regardless of the decision made, it's going to be hard, right? So noticing, getting clear when leaning into this decision, and acknowledging the fear, acknowledging the anxiety, right? And is it coming from a place of contracting that which feels no, right? Or is it coming from a place of actually expansion? And this is outside of my well-worn grooves and my habits and what I know, right? And that requires deep listening also, and having conversations with ourselves and our bodies, because we all know what it feels like to say yes. Like if, for example, when I was deciding to move to Asheville, right, it was like, oh my God, like everything that I've created is rooted in Richmond, Virginia, and my foundation is there. And there was a lot of fear.
And to be a small, like you started your own business, and to move your business to another city is a huge thing.
Yeah, good Lord.
Huge.
It is. Yeah, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of discomfort, right? And so when I leaned into that, and I'm using this as an example, right? Because there was fear and anxiety with moving, and there was fear and anxiety staying.
Yes.
Right? And so, and this is not to like, I have so much love for Richmond, Virginia. I love Richmond. It is my liquid roots. I love, but it was not where I was meant to land any longer. So I felt this when I leaned into staying. I felt this feeling. Another story, and I'll keep this one brief. I went over to my parents' house to discuss some business things with my dad very shortly after I had like absolutely made my decision to move, and this was going to happen. And I went over to their house and we had a conversation, and I had a very different reaction from my dad than I was expecting. Basically telling me, wait, don't do this yet, just wait. And the next morning, I got sick. Like, I was physically ill because I was considering not moving. I was considering not going to this place that my bones knew that I had to be. And my father, who, I mean, he is one of my greatest teachers, he taught me how to listen, right? And he's like, I don't want to say no to my dad.
Yeah.
Right. So that was this feeling of fear and anxiety that was making me feel very small. Not my dad.
No.
The decision to stay when I knew I had to go. Right. So then coming here to have this come to Jesus weekend, like that was probably the weekend before I actually went to talk with my dad. When I came to my treehouse for the first time, and I didn't tell anyone I was coming here except for my family and my cousin Anne, and just to feel it, not working, because a lot of times when I'm traveling, I'm on, right? Just to be in the woods and to be in this space and to listen. And I knew. I absolutely knew. And there was so much like, how do I even do this? I'm terrified of leaving everything that I know. And with that, there was this expansiveness. And then what my mentor, Chelsea, reminds me, and my mom reminds me too, I looked for the helpers, right? So to come back to your question, well, when do we discern whether it's fear telling us that I shouldn't do this versus fear telling me that I should do this, right? Notice if it feels contracting, like, I mean, my shoulders are like coming up to my ears right now, making you feel small and stuck. Or if it's this nervousness coming because, well, I don't know what the heck is going to happen next, right? And start to look for the helpers, right?
I think when you talk about the weekend you came here and that like way you held space for yourself to listen was like that pause, like I'm gonna go, I'm gonna be still, I'm gonna drop in. And I think this is one that like becomes super important for me, is not telling people, deciding for yourself. And as someone who, like, especially when it's people we love and admire and respect in our life, when they say something that maybe is different than what you're feeling or thinking on your own, it will throw you for a loop. It will make you sick. It will make you anxious. It will, because you love them and they're a part of you. And it's that growth of, like, I can hear you, I can see you, I can love you and honor you. And now I have to trust myself.
Yes, Halls. And that being said, are you an Enneagram 2 also?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so being an Enneagram 2,
right. 3.
That's what I thought so. Yeah, so being an Enneagram 2 and a recovering placater, perfectionist, people pleaser, and codependent.
All of them.
Right?
Right there.
So it's like letting down the people that I love, I'm going to die.
Yes.
Like my body actually tells me I'm going to die.
And if you think that's wrong for me, it must be.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be right. How could...
Yes. Yeah. So that also is an invitation to... Are you familiar with The Guest House, that poem by Rumi? Yes. Right? So invite it in. And as the story with Buddha, inviting Mara to tea, right? Have a conversation with fear, right? And my mom shared an acronym with me a while back, FEAR, face everything and rise, right? Like, how can we communicate with one another and empower each other in this situation? Because sometimes fear is there to inform you. Don't do the thing, right? Leave the relationship, whatever it is, right? Sometimes fear is there to inform you, to say, hey, I see you, and it's time to grow.
Yeah. And the beauty is, like, only you can discern what that means. And I think that's why it's such a hard thing for me, maybe others, definitely for me, is because I want someone to tell me.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
This is your anxiety.
Harry Potter sorting hat for life.
Yes.
Would that not be like the,
it would
but
be
it's
pure magic.
never going to happen.
Yeah. It could, though.
Yeah, okay, yes, never a strong word. Cancel clear. It could.
You can't take away my hairy reality dream.
But by the time we get to that point, we're not even going to want that anymore.
Yeah, you be your own sorting hat. That's what we got to picture is like, okay, I'm going to put on my sorting hat.
Right.
And did not think this conversation was going to go here, but I'm so excited. But at the end of the day, Harry controlled the sorting hat. He could have been in Slytherin, but he said not Slytherin, so it was Gryffindor, and that was what was right because it was right for Harry, not what the hat thought. So great wisdom. So you often give me, not often, well right now I'm in my second round of your rewilding course, which is incredible. Aww. So I would love for you to maybe share just a little bit about what rewilding is and during this course, like 10 out of 10 recommend it. It's all about these things we're talking about today, like dropping in, listening to your body. And Tara provides these really like tangible practices that we work on each week. So maybe if you share what rewilding is and a practice that people can land with today.
It was another connect the dots. It created it. I mean, I did some planning to make it happen.
She does a lot of planning. By the way, I've asked her for help with writing my book, and she just casually calls me with a whole document full of like every checkbox of everything you need to do. And that's the way Tara is with everything. And the beauty about it is she scaffolds and knows all the logistical details, will work harder than anyone you'll know, and then she steps back and holds space for it to flow. And that is like the biggest teacher for me, because like the go, people can figure that out, people can do, but the ability to create that structure and then step back so it can flow through, that's how you create magic.
It's alchemy, right? Thank you, Halls. And that is a lot of what rewilding is, right? I have created a curriculum that is based on my own journey, my own healing to thrive, with different exercises that I've learned from teachers, including my mentor, Chelsea Corris, Martha Beck, my own poetry, my own life experiences. And I have created a curriculum that invites people, human souls, beautiful, lovely beings, in a group setting to gather on a weekly basis. And every week has a different theme that invites us to get back into our bodies so that we can tap back into that internal compass. And it's a lot having to do with learning how to trust ourselves again, too. And showing up for ourselves, so that whether it's deciding what to have for dinner, to deciding when to move and when to be still on our mat, to where to move and relocate a small business, right? We can trust ourselves. So it's journaling prompts and exercises. It's a lot of outdoor invitations to commune with nature and receive messages that way. It's getting on our mats. It's joining in conversation. It's journaling. And it is a very safe container that is created by every single individual who shows up. And it's for 5 weeks. And after that 5 weeks is done, I am available for one-on-one coaching, one-on-one asana practice as well. And now that I'm getting to lead in-person retreats again in that capacity too. And I offer my support within my capacity, which I've learned is also very important. Yes. What's a boundary, right? So I make myself available in the capacity that I am able. Also through literature, poetry. I have 2 albums of guided meditations to offer as guidance too, which can be found on Spotify and everywhere that music is streamed. And rewilding is still evolving too, right? It's a curriculum that continues to write itself.
Yeah, and I can see the differences already in the 2 courses as well. And what I have found this word to mean, because I feel like it's a word people see popping up more, is rewilding, but the way in which you've brought me to it has been like maybe turning down the volume of what culture and society and the people you love might be telling you, and tapping back into your true nature, to your body, to that space inside of you, and learning how to honor that. And this course is full of tools in which to help you do that, that start with like very accessible things throughout your day. But I think that Martha Beck is talking all about this. There are a lot of people talking about, what is Martha Beck's tagline? It's like,
she says, don't come to consensus, come back to your senses.
Yes, and that's what I think you have taught me so much. And it helps in its mindfulness too. It's like when we're feeling those anxious moments, we ground down, we use our senses, our sense of sight, our touch, our taste, our smell, our breath to land. And then when we're present, we're tapped into who we truly are. We can then allow that space to inform us as we move through. And I think as we move through everything, I think today was a great example of this. We are both like planners and structured and like to get things done. And we've let this kind of just be an unfolding of like, okay, we'll do this thing, then we'll check in and see how it feels. Yep. And I've noticed like in planning this trip with Will too, like there's the part of me that's like, I want to control and know the timeline and know where you're doing this next and when we're going to do that. And since we got in the car, it was like, okay, we're going to drop that. And how things are just unfolding so nicely, and like unfolding with plans with you, and like biking and climbing and sitting in the sun, and just all the things. When you let go of that control, you hold space for that trust and that life to just flow.
And the scaffolding that you created, you planned the trip, now let it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I just learned from Brene Brown. my bud Brene and Glennon, you know.
I wish.
This concept of near and far enemy. Are you
telling
familiar?
me about this?
Yeah.
Please go into this.
So, and of course, I'm like doing my little thing. I was standing right over there. I remember when it hit me. I was standing right over there in my little kitchen area. And they're speaking of connection. And so this concept of near and far enemy. So the far enemy of something is its exact opposite, right? So the far enemy of connection would be, what's its opposite? Disconnection, right? So the near enemy of something, so it's a far enemy is usually pretty easy to spot because it's opposite, right? And then the near enemy of something can be kind of sneaky and oftentimes appears as something good or helpful, but often is detrimental to the situation at hand. So the far enemy of connection is disconnection. The near enemy of connection is control. And they said that, and I was like, oh. I'm really proud of myself. I haven't cussed this whole time. Can we cuss on your podcast?
Fine, yeah.
Okay. I almost did it again. I caught myself. Yeah, and it really hit me. And then it was like just all these things started coming into my brain because I know that that's something that I've been working on releasing the grip of for little bit of time now.
Raising my hand.
Right. And so acknowledging how that can also come up as in disguise as over planning, right? Or over organizing, or in a relationship, manipulating the situation at hand so that somebody might need you.
Who would ever do
right?
that?
I know nothing about that. In recovery. Thank goodness for Mark Groves and Terry Cole. More shout outs for learning so much about relationships and what codependency actually is, what that really means. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, so I'm going to bring myself back.
We'll go there tomorrow.
Right, yes. So the near enemy of connection is control, right? So we do what needs to be done, and then we allow it to happen, right? Which takes a whole lot of trust, which is really important that you surround yourself with people that you can trust and that you show up for yourself and continue to cultivate that relationship of trust within your own self, right?
And I think that kind of circles back to the thread of this conversation for me today is that trust, that trust within yourself, like rewilding, kind of being about trusting your instincts, trusting yourself, anxiety versus intuition, trusting yourself to discern that, and trusting those magic moments, like when someone sees a vision for you or when you plant a seed, you trust that like you hold space, and however it needs to grow and unfold, it will.
Yeah. And Halls, I would add to that. Thank you for that. That was so beautifully articulated. Trust ourselves.
Yes.
Right? Because every past version of ourselves has informed us to this now moment in which we are ourselves. Right? So instead of maybe looking back and saying, well, how could I have behaved in that way? And flipping that and saying, thank you, that version of myself that taught me to trust myself now that much more deeply, that informed me through that behavior, that is allowing me to be that much more aware of how I'm moving through the world. Thank you. Right?
Yeah. Well, as we end with that beautiful exhale,
Do we have to stop?
we don't, but
No,
might, but we will continue.
Yeah, we will continue. We're going to go for that walk.
But I do want to hold space for you to just name how people can stay connected with you and your wonderful work, your poetry books, your Instagram, all the things that you put out into the world that people can follow you through.
Thank you. And thank you again for reminding me that. I always forget. Often forget, not always. Instagram is Great Abiding Yoga, like Great Abiding Love. Also on Facebook. You can also find me on Facebook under Tara Becky Eschenroeder, pronouns she, her. And what else? My website. greatabidingyoga.com. Also, highly encourage individuals, if they're interested, to sign up for my newsletter. Because when you sign up on greatabidingyoga.com, you just scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll get some freebies as well. And also by signing up for my newsletter, you'll get upcoming events and special things, like when I release albums and books and stuff like that. Social media also. And come and play with me too. Rewilding School, I teach a Thursday Zoom class, so wherever you are, most Thursdays, unless I'm traveling in an airplane or in the car, that would be interesting. So I would say greatabidingyoga.com. Great Abiding Yoga on socials is probably the best way. Yeah.
Thank you so much for welcoming us all into the treehouse and to soak in this magic for a bit.
Thank you, Halls, for this honor and for being such a profound example to me of what it is to live in integrity and truth.
You're the one who teaches me again and again, and I mean that.
Well, let's keep hanging out because I think we inspire each other.
I think we can do that.
Yeah. Or I feel.
I feel that too. Thank you.